What's going on, everybody, and welcome here into the Refresh Network. As always, so good to have you here with us. You know, mental health and some of the struggles that can come along with that, it can be a very invisible struggle. I've talked about that a little bit in the past, and you truly never know what somebody is struggling with day in and day out. It's often something that we do not see. And the interview today that we're diving into, something that I hope kind of illustrates that and can kind of help drive that point home just a little bit. We are talking to Michael Shynes. Michael Shynes is a musician. He is from Little Falls, Minnesota. And he has played a lot of gigs here around the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And he also recently became a pretty big deal in Poland, of all places. Pretty incredible stuff. So he teamed up with a group called Komodo over in Poland. Last year, he actually went over there. He performed for a crowd. Actually, he performed to a couple of crowds. One of them, over 70,000 people. Amazing. One of their videos has nearly 90 million views on YouTube as well. And I recently saw him performing at the Basilica Block Party, had a conversation with him, and that has led to the conversation that we are having here today on the Refresh Network. He is a guy that makes his living getting up in front of crowds, performing, playing his music, and at the same time managing some anxiety that comes up for him around that. Michael's also been on his own journey with depression as well, and he opens up about both of those things here today in this episode. A lot of stuff to get to with this. He gets very real about what's often going through his mind when he's up there on stage performing. Again, another kind of invisible struggle that we don't always see if you go to a Michael Shynes concert, of course. How his tendency is often to isolate when he's in one of those dark places mentally. That is something that really, really resonated for me, and so grateful that he shared that message with us here today. Also, how he's learning to manage his mental health and keep showing up for not only his music career, but also his family, those people in his life that are so important. I truly believe that when one person shares their own struggle, when one person is vulnerable, we all benefit, because hopefully it makes us all feel a little bit less alone. And I want to give a big thank you again to Michael for sitting down, doing this interview, being real, being vulnerable. I was so grateful for the conversation. And without further ado, let's dive into it. Here he is, Michael Shynes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Dude, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome to be here. Thanks for having me, Brian.
Really appreciate it. And I think one of the really cool things since we've started talking about mental health is the number of people that I've come across that I've known previously. Yeah. And I start talking about what we're doing, talking about mental health. Yeah. And it kind of allows me to get to know people at like a deeper level right away, which is what happened when I saw you at the Basilica Block Party. Right. You were performing. Yeah. And I mentioned what we were up to, and you mentioned that mental health is something that you kind of have your own story with, your own journey. What does that look like for you?
It's just a daily struggle. And I think the thing about, I got excited hearing you talking about it because I think people want to talk about it. I know. And it's almost like, you know, we have cameras here and whatever, but like, even if we didn't, it would be something we want to talk about, but it's difficult to bring up. So my journey is being a performer, being in front of a lot of people all the time, just the perpetual anxiety and relief of every day. Being like, I'm nervous, like, then I always go to like the worst case scenario of what could happen at a show. And it hasn't happened yet, but I'm always convinced that next time is gonna be the time when the wheels just fall off. Yeah. And then rather than like being able to savor the moment at times, I'm really just feeling that relief at the end that it didn't fall off the tracks, the train didn't go off the tracks, rather than just being like, well, that was a great experience, or rather just being like relieved. And so I would like to get to a place where I'm more in the moment and can enjoy it rather than just like craving that moment when it's after the performance and I haven't screwed it up. So that's the anxiety piece, and then depression too, where you just like comes in waves where you just don't feel anything, you know, for certain periods of time. Like things that used to bring you joy just don't, and you can't put your finger on why. You can even write down on a piece of paper all the innumerable ways that I've been blessed, but yet that doesn't help me in those moments when I'm battling it head on.
Have you ever talked about this publicly before?
I don't think so. I mean, like, I'm open about it, but I haven't done it through any sort of platform really, except for maybe I did a Facebook post just saying like the having the platinum record in Poland and all these amazing things that look so great on the surface was actually when I was the saddest that I can ever remember being, which was the peak of my career thus far, which is inverted from what people's perceptions likely were, because we put out our best representative via social media and all these things. It's almost like window dressing, which I think prevents us from talking even more.
So when you're up there on stage performing, I mean, most people are looking up there thinking, I mean, I've seen you perform before. Here's a guy up there that has it all together. He's owning, working the crowd. He's doing his thing. He's really talented. What is it usually like for you internally when you're on stage?
It's like I will look out there and you almost think that everybody out there in the crowd is aware of your greatest insecurities. And they've pinpointed all of them and all the things that you hate about yourself that somehow these people are aware of. And that's like in its extreme. Like it's not that like that for me in any moment, but at my worst, that's how it feels, is like, oh my gosh, like if you knew the real me, you wouldn't accept me and maybe you're already onto me. It's like almost like that fraud syndrome where you think like if somebody knew the truest, most authentic form of you, that you're incapable of deserving love. Kind of thing. And so at its worst, that's what it's like. At its best, I'm able to let go of that and really get in touch with myself and be in the moment, and it's beautiful.
Every show, do you get anxious for? Is there anxiety around every show, every performance?
I think that's safe to say, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, even if I'm really calm on the surface, there's always something going underneath.
How do you sustain this? So you talk about some of the insecurities and like the anxiety and things like that, but yet your whole livelihood is wrapped around performing.
Yeah.
What have you found? Like how do you manage it? How do you maneuver through that when it gets tough?
Shrink the time periods down to as small of time period as they need to be. Like try to not think big picture, not think about the next week, not think about the next even couple days, sometimes shrink it down to as little as 15 minutes. Like get through the next set, get through the next song, get through the next drive, and so like when I try to manage it all, I can get myself to where I feel like I'm on like the edge of a nervous breakdown, but I can also for now pare myself down to being able to get through that incremental period of time to where I know, talk myself down, I've gone through this, I'm gonna get through it. And then CBD has been great for me. That stuff really has helped. I've been drinking less. That's a depressant, and if you're battling depression, so that's not as good. But the CBD and that stuff doesn't kick back. And I'm getting older, so it's like every drink you have kicks you back, and like in a way that I don't think is worth it increasingly as time goes on. So I'm looking for more holistic remedies, just things like drinking a green drink in the morning, what kind of caffeine you're getting, how you eat, whether you are moving your body, getting exercise. Like it's so lame, but it's literally what makes all the difference in the world is the choices that I'm making day by day. I can often correlate exactly to what my mental state is.
Kind of amazing. I know you kind of need, I've really been trying to work on that in my own life too, is just like having kind of an infrastructure around me that allows me to like show up for my day in the best possible way, knowing that all that stuff is still going to hit me and it's still going to be a part of my experience.
Yes.
But putting myself in a position where at least I can kind of battle it.
That's exactly right. Just putting yourself in the best position. Yeah, like that's all we can do, really, because there's variables that are beyond our control, I feel like. Do
you have people in your life that you can talk to about this stuff?
I have so many people I can talk to.
Yeah.
The issue is me reaching out. When I go dark, I don't want to inconvenience anybody with my feelings, and I almost become much less social. Like, so where I'll be like driving, I'll have a 5-hour drive, I'm like, I should call somebody, but I don't. And I just like, I can't explain that, but I kind of turn in on myself in those moments when I need people the most. And the weird thing about that is, and you're probably the same way, is you would be so available to somebody that had those problems, but yet when you have them, you feel like it would be a bother to like pull somebody else in on that at times.
It's a huge thing in my life, learning how to like lean into people as opposed to like isolate, and because that is for sure when I get into those dark places too. It's like
Yeah.
I just want to be alone, and I kind of want to get like really introverted, and I think that's okay to an extent.
Yeah.
But like also realizing that life is, I mean, it's kind of a lonely existence, right? If I'm not reaching out, and because it's that reaching out and being vulnerable that allows for connection, right? Which is what we so desperately need.
That's exactly what it is. And I think it's the tendency versus like what would be best, right? Is like my tendency is to go introvert. My tendency is to go hermit and go, but what the actual best course of action, and no matter how many times I do it, I'm like, and then you talk to anybody for even a few minutes, you're like, I feel better. Even if you had like a good interaction with somebody at like Walgreens, where they were like overly friendly to you, I'm like, I feel a little better.
Yes.
So if you could force yourself in those moments to do that, and I'm just trying to be better about that, and like, hey, just like, even though you don't feel like picking up this call right now, just do it, see what happens. I bet you'll feel better.
I'm just curious, you're talking about how your kind of natural response when things get tough is to kind of go inward. Has having kids and being married and being in those relationships, has that taught you a lot of like how to not go to that place
oh
as
my
much?
gosh, yeah. It's not even taught me, it has insisted upon me that, because there's literally nowhere I can go in my house. So our house is 980 square feet.
Yes.
And I have 2 dogs, a toddler, and a daughter who's 7, a wife, and did I say a hairless cat already?
No, you haven't mentioned that.
I
told me that
have a
before.
hairless cat as well.
Yeah.
So there's not a room in the house that I will go that something will not jump on me. So
Totally.
dogs downstairs, cat upstairs, kids everywhere, wife in the house. And so, yes, it has taught me that like I need to stop being selfish when I'm struggling and keeping it from the people that I love the most. And it forces you to just kind of carry on. To whereas like if I would start to get really depressed in college, or like when I was living as a bachelor, I would like really cycle down, and I would start canceling all my plans. Sometimes I would even cancel gigs, just feeling like you couldn't leave the house. But I've learned better coping skills to where like I can get through everything now. Even when I can like put on a brave face and get through it and not become an unreliable musician or an unreliable father or an unreliable husband, I'm still able to perform those functions even when I'm struggling. So it's taught me to do that because there's really not another choice.
I have to talk to you about music because that's what you do, and your music is so amazing. You played at my sister's wedding.
I did.
I mean, come on.
Yes.
It was awesome.
It was great. It was a beautiful venue.
But you're doing such great stuff. What do you like about music?
What I like about it, and I almost wanted to talk about this, is like the fact that like depression and anxiety and negative emotions are fuel for songwriting, which is, I think, can be the most messed up part of being a musician. Is like you feel like if you solve yourself, if you fix yourself, maybe the songs will go with that. Maybe the dark passenger is what brings you the creativity, but it also brings you these negative emotions. And so that's the tough part for me to navigate, is not want to revel in the darkness, because it can create some really great art.
So that's interesting. So even like, so these things that are a struggle, and that can be really tough, are also like fueling your art in this really amazing way. Is there a fear that like, if the tough times were to go away, that you wouldn't be able to do music?
There was that fear. I had that fear, but I have never had a better life than I have right now.
Sure.
But I went through some stuff. So what now I have to do is I almost have to access my past. So like when I'm songwriting about heartbreak, I'm happily married now. I want for nothing in that department, but I'm able to go back into the times where I was heartbroken and access that. Or like, you know, losing my dad. I don't revel in that the way that I did right after it happened, but I'm still able to access those emotions. So I don't think that by having a good life, you're gonna lose your inspiration. I think when you could start to write bad music is when you lose your ability to access that person you were before. It's tricky. I think it can be done. I think that's a total myth that like you need to be miserable to write, but I think you have to have gone through some stuff. So now that I've gone through some stuff that I think is real and I can access it, I think I'm okay even being happy, you know, or in a great place.
What is it about this dream that keeps you chasing it?
It's elusive. Like the first gig I played after 72,000 people in Poland was 8 people at a craft fair. So like it will bring you up the roller coaster, it will bring you down to the deepest valley, And I think it's that thing of like always feeling like you're going to be able to at some point have it in your grasp, but you never really will. Yeah. That makes it something that you will chase till the ends of the earth.
Is there something that you maybe say to yourself often, or something that you would want to say to other people out there that are watching this that maybe really resonate with some of the things that you're talking about when it comes to depression and it comes to anxiety?
Yeah, I mean, it's so cliche, but I think the best assessment that I've ever heard is the serenity prayer, which is just, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I think if you can actually follow that to the letter, if you can eliminate the ability of the external to influence your happiness and your well-being and your contentment, and also not allow your pursuit of like material items to influence those things, and give yourself the power to determine what your mood is, to determine your own well-being. Empower yourself to do that and don't let the external do that. And I think that's really the key to what we're doing here.
A big thank you once again to Michael for sitting down and sharing his story with us. I think one quote coming out of this that could really be something that resonates, I think maybe challenge some of us, is when he said, even though you do not feel like picking up this call right now, just do it, see what happens. And I think that is so key. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've been having a hard day, I've been in kind of a weird headspace and maybe a dark place, and I've seen either a phone call coming in and I've resisted picking it up because I think, hey, I'm just not in a good space to talk, or maybe resisting and shying away from calling somebody when I have time. I think at the end of the day, what we all need is connection, right? And maybe it's just something to think about, right? Maybe instead of shying away from that connection, perhaps we can challenge ourselves just a little bit to show up, lean into one another, take that phone call, make the call, and realize that you do not have to have it all pulled together. You don't have to say the right things. You don't have to impress anybody else. Sometimes what we need in those really tough times is just to connect with another human being. So I'm so glad that Michael mentioned that. Big thank you once again to Michael for taking the time. Like I said, leading into the interview, when somebody shares, when somebody is vulnerable, we all benefit, and I think that that's the case here today. As always, no matter what it is that you're going through out there, no matter what's happening for you internally, take it one day at a time, one step at a time, one moment, one day, 1 hour, 1 second at a time, and know that you are supported, and be really good to yourself. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Refresh Network. A reminder that these conversations are not meant to replace work with a therapist. If you feel you need it, do reach out to a trained professional. Be good to yourselves out there, and I'll talk to you soon.